Oh my gosh. I just.
Yeah, we're set. We're up. Yeah. What? Yeah. I can't. Yeah, they're trying to, but yes. Okay. Monty, Helen, Joe,
I saw this one and was like,
yeah. Chris Cone, Marva. Yeah. No. You just talk into it, yes.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, whoa, this is so official. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Apparently for our friends on Zoom, the only way to actually hear us is by standing up here and talking into the microphone. So we're going to be a little bit more formal than we usually are. I feel like a professor all of a sudden. But everyone, welcome to our June general membership meeting. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pivotal time because like many voters on the street, we have a general primary election coming up. So we have to inform the voters. Hey, Joanne, just saw you. So we got a lot of business to cover, but wanted to kick off by welcoming our newest member, Mark, who just joined Matthew, who just joined a minute ago. He actually came over from the Republican Party. So that's pretty incredible, about 2 years ago. So he also is already a member of IND by Action. He carried our petitions earlier this year, and we thank him for that. So thank you so much for joining officially, and we'll make sure to get you a t-shirt. Okay, so pulling up my agenda, but I did just pull up my grocery list twice in looking for my agenda. So, okay, wanted to start with old business, which we need to address. So last general membership meeting, we heard from a member of IND who was interested in creating a monument to the Sisters of Abolition and the movement there. So we drafted a letter that's been circulated to everyone. I'm sure all of you read it in detail, as it was a really great letter. Thank you to Seamus for putting that together for us. So we are going to take a motion to vote in favor of passing this letter. Does anyone have a motion for us? So moved, seconded. Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor? All right, okay. Any opposed on Zoom? All right. Great, the motion passes. So we have a letter and we will make sure to send that out, and hopefully that results in some movement to creating a landmark in a new landmark in our area for a very worthy cause. Okay. So from one letter to another, we have some Dear Neighbor letters going out for our very own endorsed candidate, Linda Wilson. I saw Seamus put a ton in the mail. He probably clogged up the mail slots, which is great. But there still is opportunity to send Dear Letter emails the more 21st century way. So if you haven't yet, we can get you a copy of the letter. So just let us know if you're interested in doing this. I think they're really important. Lynn has a question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it and had a page for the 39th CD and for the 20th and the 33rd. And both of them said there are no primaries in this district.
Right.
And I'm just wondering whether people are going to be confused because since there's no city council race, this thing doesn't say there's just no city council race, but there may be others.
Right.
I think they may be primary.
Yeah. I'm going to annoyingly repeat what you just said for the folks on Zoom. But Lynn Hill was raising the point that in the Vote New York City voter guide, there is no additional races when there is just one city council member running for office. So she raises the point that a lot of people don't think there is a primary, which if I know a lot of folks in this room have been out with literature from Linda. So many people say, oh, I don't need it. There's no primary in my district. And the number one thing that we can say to these voters is there is a primary, there's a judicial race. It's so important that we actually turn out the vote because now more than ever, every vote counts here. It's going to come down to an extremely low turnout election. I wouldn't imagine a high turnout at all. So these races matter so much. So I would encourage everyone, if they haven't yet sent a letter or a Dear Neighbor email, to do that to make sure everyone knows. Joanne or Joan. Okay. Mhm. Yes. Right. That's a good point. So Joan, just repeating for the people at home, Joan said that it's important to know that, or to tell voters that the election is a state election rather than a city election. And that's why it's not in the Vote NYC voter guide, which is a very good point. Mhm. Another good point. Right. Right. Yes. So to repeat again for the folks at home, sorry, this is going to be doing this all night, but Joan said that the booklet only covers people who have city funding and city funded races. So it makes sense that the state candidates are not in. So it's a statewide issue. So all good points, all reiterating the fact that we must make sure we tell our friends, our neighbors, our building that there is a race and there is a really highly regarded candidate that is our own Linda Wilson, who has been doing an amazing job. I see her all over my neighborhood. She is best at this point. Echo. She's best friend with my dog at this point because I run into her while I'm out walking the dog weekly, which is amazing. So if you haven't done that yet, I highly encourage you to do that and get in touch with us ASAP about text that we can send over, make it really easy for you. Jason. And I promise I did not plant that question as a transition, but we do have our early voting sign up sheet that I'm going to circulate. So this is day by day. It has all of the early voting locations within the 52nd Assembly District. I encourage you to sign up for at least one, if not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many you want to do. And we will send you home with literature today. And you can also pick up literature from our big early voting kickoff event, which will be Saturday. Can't believe it's Saturday already. So Saturday, June 17th, 11 a.m. We're going to meet at Borough Hall with the candidate herself, and then we'll send IND folks to City Tech and Borough Hall to man those poll sites. And we're going to be doing this in tandem with CBID, who will be covering early voting sites in the 44th District, Assembly District, and LID is also going to join us as well. And they'll be out all over, so wherever we need to plug folks in. So thank you, Jason, for that plug. I'm going to send out this one. The one with more colors on the front is early voting. And I also want you to commit to at least one election day shift. So this is election day. There's a ton more poll sites. And like everything, thank you to Seamus for putting this together. He's really amazing. So I'm going to send these around. I've already filled mine out, so feel free to tag along. It'll be the fun ones. And I will, do you mind? And I also see Rena also jumped in. Hey, thanks for coming. She brought cookies. So thank you. Yeah, you can put them on the table. So Rena, of course, has no primary, amazingly. So we are so excited for her to get the nomination. And she will be our judge. It's crazy. It's awesome. So she brought cookies to say thank you for all of our hard work during the petitioning process. Okay, and cupcakes. What? So exciting. Right. Feel free to. How about this? For every shift you sign up for, you get to take a cookie, but that's the only way that you get cookies. Just kidding. I won't withhold your cookies. They're amazing. Okay. All right. So speaking of challenges, here in the 52nd Assembly District, we were able to ward off judicial delegate challenges, but our friends in the reform-minded clubs across the county were not so lucky. So they have the county organization spending county funds to challenge their judicial nominations, which, as you all remember, was a process that we went through last year. And it was really upsetting that we had to do judicial delegate primaries. So we signed on to a letter along with NKD and LID and all of the clubs, basically stating for the record that it is unfair and, very not good of county to be spending the county dollars on fighting judicial delegates, which is something that we experienced last year. Luckily, we were able to ward them off this year, but just wanted to let you know that that letter has since been circulated. Okay, so I'm losing folks because cookies are out. Gonna hurry up here. So babies is our next topic. We have a lot of new babies in the club. Signature IND onesies to our state senator, Andrew Gennardis. Congratulations. Come on up. So the onesie is for the baby, not you, but you get to give it. Yeah. They're super adorable. So congratulations on your second child. So excited. Yeah. It does. It fits you well. And we also have a grandpa in our midst. We owe Steve a new onesie. I hope the baby still fits in it. And we do have one additional onesie for executive board member Dan Abramson and former corresponding secretary Dara Adams, who welcomed a baby as well. I don't know if you're here. If you're here, I'll find you and get it to you. They've been very busy as new parents. So that is our last outstanding onesie. Okay. I think that's it for now. I'll get into since I have your attention, we have a whole bunch of events coming up beyond Election Day. Everyone's signing up for shifts and eating cookies, which is great. But I wanted you to save the date on July 16th. It'll be a Sunday and it'll be a meet and greet with our district leaders. So Aaron and Lydia will be just hosting a little meet and greet in the area. I think it'll be at Carroll Gardens, but more information to come on that. And then I think you all know about this as well, but IND's annual brunch will be on September 10th. And thank you to the brunch committee, the fundraising committee, for putting it together. It's going to be a really good one. Karen, do you want to say something? Woo. That's great. Awesome. So Karen was just saying that our honoree at the IND brunch will be our own Senator Gennardis, which is a perfect transition to call him up to talk to us a little bit about your session, your first time representing us as a club, and all of your accomplishments and whatever you'd like to talk about. The mic is yours. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm working on some new poetry. Good evening, everyone. Well, first, let me just say how flattered and honored I am about the recognition at the annual brunch. When Karen called me, I said, "Are you short me? What?" I really that means so much to me. So thank you very much, everyone. It really is an honor to receive that recognition from you all. So we finished up the Albany session, the legislative session in Albany. It was quite a session indeed. A lot happened over the last 6 months. A lot of things didn't happen as well, which we can get into. But just kind of to recap, we started this year, spent 6 weeks, really 2 months trying to find a new chief judge for the Court of Appeals. That took up a lot of time and energy up in Albany, and especially in the Senate. And then we had the budget process. Budget, as we all know, got delayed by 5 weeks. So that was a whole other thing. And then the legislative session got extended past the end date for the Senate by a day and a half. And for the Assembly, they're going to go back in next week for 2 days. So Albany was for the first full year back since the pandemic, it's really like 2019 all over again for me, but different because it didn't feel as productive, or it didn't feel as it was a bit of a slog, part of it, I'm gonna be honest. But despite that, I think we had some good wins. Some of the things that I had focused on, especially during the budget in particular, expanding the child tax credit. So now 800,000 young people under the age of 4 or their families will now be eligible for the state child tax credit for the first time since the state enacted a child tax credit in 2004. That'll help 650,000 families put an average of $320 in their pockets when they file their taxes next year. And that is a down payment for what I'm trying to push, which is called the Working Families Tax Credit, which would be modeled off of what the federal government did during the American Rescue Plan. Give money to families every month so they can buy their essentials, their food, their clothing, their school supplies. God forbid they want to go to the aquarium as a family on the weekend, really the basics. We had some good wins on the MTA. Not only did we close the MTA's budget gap, we also got increased and improved service. I believe every single subway line that serves my district will now see improved service on weekends and off-peak weekday hours. So, and no longer waiting more than 10 minutes. The fact that even a 10-minute wait, I think, is still unacceptable. But look, on the R lines on the weekends, it's 25 minutes. So I'll take the 10, and then we come back next year and keep fighting for more. My work on CUNY continued. Over the last 5 years, we have increased funding for CUNY by almost $500 million, which has been tremendous. That goes to pay for more full-time faculty, more academic supports, student counselors, career counselors, mental health counselors for students. We fought back against the tuition increase. So we did a lot of good stuff there as well. And then transitioning off of budget, the 2 areas that I really focused on, or 3, I should say. Number 1, my bill with Joanne on reforming and revising the state's lockdown drill mandate. New York has the highest mandate in the country for lockdown drills in schools, one of the highest. And so we're trying to change that. If 4 times a year, students in school have to simulate a mass shooting in their school, which is just terrible. I mean, the fact that we even have to have this conversation in the United States of America in the 21st century is a crime in and of itself, as I think we all agree. But it's deeply traumatizing to young people. And there is no data whatsoever that 4 drills keeps kids safer than 3, then 2, then 1, then 30, then 40, then 50. But it actually has a deep impact on them. Their depression rates, anxiety rates, it's really significant issues there. So Joanne and I have teamed up and we're working to try to fix that. So hopefully by next year, we'll be able to report back some positive news there. We passed it in the Senate. We have a couple of tweaks to work on, and then we'll try again next year. I probably have mentioned this before, my work on children and social media, which if you have kids, if you know people with kids, if you know kids, what happens on the internet right now to kids is absolutely terrifying. Not only what they're exposed to, not only the people they're exposed to, not only the content that is poisoning their minds, the algorithms that are just feeding them more and more toxic content, their data that's being collected and sold and packaged and all this stuff. It's the wild, wild west. And so I've been really trying to push on my Child Data Privacy and Protection Act. We've made some progress this year. We're building out a statewide coalition to support it. You see in the news every single day, other states are getting in the fight as well. So this is a really timely topic and something that I think is ripe for legislative action. And then on a somewhat disappointing note, we are in a housing crisis. We're in an affordability crisis. And, we did not end the legislative session by taking any meaningful action to address any part of our housing crisis, which I think is a big disappointment. There's a lot of reasons for that. Housing is complicated. I heard some of my older colleagues say, my more experienced colleagues say that this is probably the most difficult issue they've dealt with in the legislature in their 5, 10, 20 years here. So it's challenging. And, it's not an easy solution. There's a lot of solutions. Not one is going to fix our housing crisis. All of them are going to be together. But the fact that we couldn't, even take a vote was really disappointing for me. And I think we have a lot more work here to do. We have to build a ton more housing. We have to protect tenants who don't have protections right now. We have to help prevent homelessness. We have to, help upgrade old dilapidated apartments. We got to do all of it, right? Because all of this works together. We have to get the suburbs to do their fair share. The upstate counties do their fair share. There's a lot to do here to address our housing crisis. And so it'll continue to be an area that I focus on until we take some action. So I'll stop there. I can probably go on for 18 days, as you all well know, but no one wants to hear that. So I'll stop and see if there's any questions or comments. And actually, but one more thing, we did pass a bill this year about the voter guide. We passed, I don't know if you guys passed it in the Assembly, Joanne, but in the Senate, we passed a bill to have the State Board of Elections do a similar voting guide that the city does for state elections. And I don't know, it was a Senator Myrie bill. You can ask him about it when he's here. He had a great legislative session also, so make sure you ask him all about the good things he got done this year. And then don't forget to wish him a happy birthday, okay? So yeah, because we did pass that bill. But I'm happy to take a question or two or a comment or.
They might say, excuse me, but no, I don't think we're gonna make a profit, 23%.
Yeah, so we, I know a lot of us were vocal about the proposed rate increase and the request by the utilities to go to the Public Service Commission to ask for the increase. My experience has been that most times the Public Service Commission just rubber stamps or kind of gives them what they want or part of what they want, which is deeply frustrating. On the legislative front, one of the things that we did successfully this year, we made a lot of progress on environmental issues and tackling climate change. And particularly, I'm going to cite the inclusion of the Build Public Renewables Act in the budget this year. What that means is we have now legislated a process to quadruple the state's ability to produce renewable energy, which is a direct competition to the utilities, which do it at a profit. We're talking about doing it on the behalf of the public at no profit to the public. That's going to really be a game changer once that's rolled out over the next couple of years in terms of being able to have a counterweight to the utilities saying every 6 months, every year, we need more money, we need more money. And we're actually shifting towards a much greener energy future. And it'll be led by public, by a public agency for the public good. So there's a lot of pieces to this. And so that we're working on. Yes. Well, there's always the public shaming route. This is actually something that was not, we didn't have to get the MTA to kick and scream to want to do this. They want to do this. The MTA, you opened your question by saying like, this is how you get the economy back on track. The MTA and its leadership agrees fully. They have been the biggest evangelists for that message, up in Albany and across the city. They know that the way to help their bottom line in their own budget is to get riders to believe in the system again. So they have every incentive to want to do that. Now, just for quick context, before the pandemic, about 40% of the MTA's operating budget came from fare revenue, which meant that every time you swiped, every time whatever, that money went to go subsidize the MTA. I'm of the view that we shouldn't be paying for public transit on the backs of riders to that degree, but it is what it is. Since the pandemic, that number has dropped to 28%. So there's a 12-point delta that needed to be filled. That was the $1.3 billion shortfall. So the MTA still needs rider revenue to continue and to increase in order for them to stay in the black, in order for them to provide not only the enhanced service, but even basic service. So they have every financial incentive to meet their own benchmarks. And they know that the legislature, I think, more than any year that I've been up there, has really engaged on the nitty-gritty of public transit and the MTA's budget, and really trying to get them to agree in exchange for a lot of money and a lot of public money to do what's necessary to keep the system operating at the best way possible. Take one last question. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Seamus jump that turnstile. It's always in a round. It's a really good question. So a couple of things. Number one, the MTA has just concluded a year-long study on fare evasion, and the numbers confirm what they've been saying for a long time, that they're losing a lot of money to fare evasion, hundreds of millions of dollars to fare evasion. So there's a bunch of different solutions towards, and that when they say that, that also includes the people bending their license plate to evade the tolls, right? So it's a couple hundred million on the subways, a couple hundred million on the buses, a couple hundred million in the tolls. They're taking a couple of steps there. Number one, they are deploying non-law enforcement individuals, personnel, to be at the turnstiles, to kind of just be in eyes and ears, right? The idea is that no one's going to do it if you see someone there in a uniform without a gun. There'll be that shaming effect. Number two, the MTA is supporting and wants to see an expansion of the Fair Fares program, which is funded by New York City government, which gives low-income New Yorkers access to reduced Metro cards, reduced fare Metro cards, so that for people that genuinely can't afford the now $3 a ride, because they're only making the minimum wage, if that, this will help them be able to afford accessing the subway. A bunch of us, I think like 46 of us sent a letter to the city council and to the mayor asking them to expand the eligibility of the Fair Fares program so that more low-income New Yorkers are eligible for that, which would help avoid that turnstile jumping problem. Lastly, the MTA is also now doing something that I think they should have been done a long time ago. They're changing the gates. So they're actually getting rid of the turnstiles and they're making the gates higher. And they're doing it in a way that is actually wider so that wheelchairs can get through and strollers can get through, but also are harder for people to jump. And so they are now piloting this or trying out a bunch of different models. To me, that was pretty simple solution years ago, but they're now getting to it. Great, we're glad they're at the party. And so we should see some improvements there as well. And the station clerks have been removed from the booths to help provide services on the platforms, help people find their way. If there's an incident on a platform, to be able to be eyes and ears, right? And so we're kind of taking law enforcement and putting them a little bit behind the scenes and not having to put a cop every 5 feet on the subway platform or at every single whatever. You can deploy other personnel in other ways to kind of help make the system run better, cleaner, more efficient, give people a sense of security that there are eyes and ears everywhere. And I think it's probably going to be a net positive overall. I saw Matt have his hand, yeah. How much time do you have? You ever hear the expression, the two things you don't want to see made are laws and sausages, right? This is, I think, a great example of that, right? Everyone's for housing until it's on their block or in their neighborhood or, going to block their view or going to whatever, right? That's one part of the problem. Then you have the profit motive. Some people who want to build housing don't want to do it in a way that comes with, caps on how much they can charge for rent or how much their rents can grow, or they don't want to make it easier to keep tenants in their apartment. Or people who live in, suburban communities, they pay for their white picket fence and their, winding roads, and they pay a premium for that in their view, and they pay the property taxes to support that. And they don't want to see 2 stories or 3 stories, even in their downtown, Main Street. So everyone has a view here and everyone's got 30 views on what should be done here. Getting to a consensus is very difficult. You have to have a majority vote and you have to do something that's ultimately going to be signed into law, because otherwise we're just doing it for the academic exercise of it. We did have a bill that was proposed, a framework that was agreed to between the Senate and the Assembly on the last days of session that would have done some, but not all of what needed to happen to start addressing the housing crisis. We had the votes. I believe we had the votes, in both chambers. The governor got wind of it and she said, "What's in it?" We told her what's in it. And she said, "I will veto it. Absolutely not. I will not support this." So at that point you say, okay, well, what do we give up? But then once you start taking pieces out, then you lose votes and then you don't have enough votes to pass it. And then you say, well, then Governor, what do you want to have in here? He says, so it's complicated. So I think we have to keep talking and keep working at this. it shouldn't be this hard, but the fact is that it is. And, unless we address this problem, we will not get out of this crisis. And in the last decade alone, there was an article in the New York Times in January, 200,000 Black families leaving New York. And why? Because they can't afford to live here. Right. And that's just one statistic for one group of people. You take that out citywide. People talk about people leaving New York. It's not millionaires leaving New York because they want to move to Miami to live the high life. It's working families and middle-class families who can't afford their rent and their daycare. That's who's leaving New York. And if we want to keep these people in New York, we want to keep people to come back to New York, we have to address that. I took up more time than I was allowed, so I'm sorry. Thank you for your indulgence, everyone. And thank you very much. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail, guys. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I see our candidate, Linda. Do you have a minute to say hi before you run off? She's off to the Brooklyn Young Dems, I believe, right? BYD, our friends at BYD. So if you could come here, sorry that we have to speak into the mic. It's more formal than most of our meetings, but all right, Linda Wilson, our candidate. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for all of the time and the effort, energy, and support that you've given my candidacy for a civil court judge. I'm so grateful to have a group of folks like you who care as desperately as I do to make sure that we have experienced jurists on the bench who care deeply about equal justice. It's something that we're all passionate about. And so collectively, we will ensure that we have the win. And the people of Brooklyn will be very happy to know that that your continued support is what got us across the line. I got really great feedback from people around Brooklyn who saw IND out and about at the big event in Grand Army Plaza on Saturday. I was so very proud of the showing and of the excitement that people around Brooklyn expressed, and you really galvanized folks to want to participate. And other great endorsements have come in since your support and your visibility has really energized people around this campaign. So thank you so much. I look forward to continuing collaborating with you all throughout the election season. And I can't wait until we come back to celebrate the win. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
The life of a candidate. On to the next place, but we wish her luck. Okay, wanted to see where the sign up sheets were because I see one of them got stuck on the cookies. So yeah, underneath the cookies. Okay, Joan is resurfacing the election day sign up sheet and make sure it goes to the back row there as well. We can't let Ken in sneaking out on any of the shifts. He must submit to one shift at least. And folks on the Zoom, did we distribute the sign up sheet there? Okay, so for accountability, folks on Zoom, if you can type into the chat when and where you're available to sign up for at least one early voting shift and at least one election day shift, that would be amazing. We can get you the right details and literature. Is there typing going on? Attendance for Zoom folks. Attendance for Zoom folks. Yeah, if you just, go ahead, James.
I was actually just going to type it in.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Do it on site.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay. Seamus is going to drop the link for the early voting sign up sheet and the Seamus is going to do what Seamus does, which is solve all the problems. So thank you, Seamus. Okay. So what's next on the agenda? So we heard a great state Senate legislative session recap. Another organization that's been doing amazing things for a long time, but I think had some good success on the Senate side for the SHIELD Act, correct? Is our friends at BK Forge. So I'd love to call up Marta, who is czar/co-chair of BK Forge, in charge of all things, to tell us a little bit about the work this legislative session, goals for next year, and how IND can get involved in whatever you're working on. So come on up. Alrighty, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Marta Schaaf. I've been a co-chair of BK Forge, or Brooklyn for Reproductive and Gender Equity, since 2017. We actually don't have any czars. I didn't. And I'm going to go over a few bills that we worked on this legislative session, and then describe some other things that we've been working on and give you some things to watch for next year. I know it's the same session, so I'm not sure what word I'm supposed to use. Joanne. The next, okay. No, it's the same one, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, next year. Okay. Yes. When it is called into session again, next in session. Yes, next year. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about 3 laws. We have a much larger legislative agenda, but I'm going to talk about the things that are salient and that kind of have traction and some chance of passing next year. Some things we've been working on for several years, like comprehensive sex ed, don't really have much of a chance. So we've those have fallen by the wayside in our work. So the things I want to talk about are the New York State Shield Law, which has emerged in the wake of the Dobbs decision. So the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. This law was debated for a while, and there was an earlier version that was rejected by important groups such as the New York Civil Liberties Union. And we have this consensus bill, which would protect reproductive health service providers in New York State. So the idea is that if they are prescribing abortion pills and to folks from out of state, this would protect them from prosecution, loss of license or allegations or finding of malpractice, and from subpoenas of their medical records. This is, of course, because of Dobbs, but also because medication abortion, which is a significant portion of the abortions provided in the United States, are increasingly, they're the sort of new target of the anti-choice community. That bill, like many bills this session, passed the Senate, but not the Assembly. So I'm happy to answer questions about that, but I'm going to move on to the next bill. The next one is the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Fund. The idea being that New York State, which has passed the Reproductive Health Act in 2019, will increasingly be a sanctuary state for abortions. So people are going to come from out of state, even from states where abortions are allowed under some circumstances, because of limitations on access, because of the infrastructure that's here. And so we want to ensure that that infrastructure is resilient in the face of increased demand. And prior to the Dobbs decision, we actually already had problems with access, with folks facing, in some cases, long wait times, particularly in the city. So the idea is to buttress our system to accommodate people, particularly low-income folks, both within New York and coming from out of state. So this fund would create a sustainable funding mechanism and direct the Department of Health to provide support to abortion funds, which provide funding for abortions for people who need them, as well as to support for practical assistance. And by practical assistance, I'm talking about things like bus fare, a train ride, childcare, gas, et cetera. And this is important because when folks are traveling out of state, it may be very challenging, particularly for people who are already mothers, which is the majority of people getting abortions in the United States right now, who have a lot of demands on their time already. So the idea is to support local groups that already exist to provide these services. That also passed the state Senate, but not the Assembly. And then the third bill is the Hospital Transparency Bill. And this is a bill that's supported by a broad coalition. And what it does is direct hospitals to provide information both to the public and to the State Department of Health regarding whether or not and what kinds of services they provide with regard to miscarriage management, abortion care, end-of-life care, and gender-affirming care. So the bill has 2 purposes. Firstly, to ensure transparency to the public, but also to provide this important data to the Department of Health so they can ascertain where there may be deserts for particular kinds of care in New York State. So for example, upstate, in some areas, a lot of the care is provided by Catholic hospitals. So there's a concern that it may be quite a large area where one cannot obtain care of a particular kind. And it's difficult to figure that out now when hospitals aren't affirmatively providing that information. So patients will go already be there and then find out that a certain kind of care isn't available. That too has passed the Senate, but not the Assembly. So one other thing that we're working on is the Equality Amendment. This is basically updated version of the ERA, of the Equal Rights Amendment. It has passed, but next year will be voted on by the voters in New York because this would be an amendment to the state constitution. So we expect to be pounding the pavement to try to make sure that folks are voting. As you know, with the voting rights amendments last year, the state Democratic Party really failed to put effort into ensuring that folks were knowledgeable about what was on the ballot and that they voted for it. So we're trying to preemptively to avoid that problem by getting ourselves ready to advocate for that in the next legislative session. Or sorry, when it's up for vote by the public. Sorry, I came back from London really late last night. I put in a full day of work today, so I'm not at my best cognitively. I apologize for that. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is just some of our work on crisis pregnancy centers, because this is something we think it's important for New Yorkers to know about. Because we live in a state where abortion is permitted, people often think that we don't have problems with things like crisis pregnancy centers. There are actually more of these than abortion providers in New York State. These are centers which will say something like planning your parenthood. Some of them are explicitly designed to misrepresent what they do. Others are more direct. There are many different flavors of crisis pregnancy centers, and these try to dissuade women and other pregnant people from obtaining an abortion. And they may engage in very misleading things like telling women that they're more likely to get breast cancer if they have an abortion, that if they have an abortion, they may experience significant or likely to experience significant depression, that abortions can be reversed, which is not true. And try to, just give them other kinds of misleading information about medical abortion, et cetera, shame them. There are instances in New York City of these centers calling parents because they are not certified health providers. They do not have to follow HIPAA and other laws that are intended to regulate health services. So this is something that we've worked on both in terms of advocating for legislation at city and state level. The city has a pretty robust law, but has largely declined to enforce it because it's challenging and because they don't want to get sued. It'd be very expensive. And there was a law in California that was overturned by the Supreme Court. So right now what's happening is there is a study bill that has passed, and the State Department of Health is studying basically patient pathways to understand who is accessing these centers and when, and to sort of present it in the context of service availability in New York State, where there are deserts where people only have access to these centers, and to come up with some kind of public information or other effort to try to decrease the number of women and other pregnant people who end up at these centers. So we've worked on this in terms of both, as I said, advocating for legislation, but also reporting violations of the city law, putting realistic evaluations of them on Google and Yelp and other things. We've done a lot of activism around them. So that's kind of our key priorities at this point in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions, tell folks how to get involved. We do have a weekly digest with actions, almost always things focused on reproductive and gender equity. And we're part of coalitions that are both within the city and statewide. Yes. Joanne may have more insight into that than I do. I suspect part of it is just that it's a short session and there was a lot happening. And so it's just a case of what's rising to the top in terms of priorities. Some of the bills have a significant number of co-sponsors. So I'm not sure that on the SHIELD law, I'm sure there is opposition, but that wasn't something that kind of came up in our coalition call. So a lot of the coalitions around these are led by Planned Parenthood and NYCLU, and we sort of follow their lead and get our insights as to what's happening from them. The chief sponsor on the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Fund is Gonzalez Rojas, who used to be the head of the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health. So she wrote the bill. I actually can't remember who were the other two. Sorry to say. I have the bill numbers. I'm happy to share that. Mhm. I'm pretty sure she is. We lobbied her on those that she was not a co-sponsor of, and then we followed up. So I'm thinking that she is now. Yeah. Yeah. in a lot of states, there's been a huge increase in their state money going to them. So some of those like Protect Life license plates go to them. And then what's been really challenging is in some contexts, there's many different flavors, and in some contexts, they provide services that are not being provided otherwise that people really need, like diapers or other things. And so folks who consider themselves reproductive justice advocates will argue that this is not only about access to abortion and to family planning, it's also about access to parenthood for those who want it. So I think it's hard to paint them all with one brush. But it's definitely the case that there's been an increase in both funding and number in many states. And it's hard to track it also because some of them appear to be mostly smoke and mirrors, like they're a way for a church to say, yeah, we're doing something. So there have been like investigative reporters who found it's actually just a trailer in the church parking lot, and they sit in a car for a week and see like 2 people go in. So we don't really, so it's not easy to get a handle on. And none of them, because they're not health providers, the only database that exists is maintained by activists. Yeah, from a sort of regulatory perspective, it's a real challenge to come up with something. Yep. Any other questions? And our website is bkforge.org. You can sign up there for our weekly digest and learn more.
I know our student assembly members are
Mhm.
speaker and
Yeah, super. And we'll be doing visibility and things around the equality amendment as well. Okay. Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, wow, just off the plane from London, I was like not able to move for a day after that. So congratulations to you. Okay, so update, like we have a frosting covered sign up sheet, which I take as a good sign. Thank you all for signing up and really excited to get out there. As a reminder, I see we have one sign up for Brooklyn Borough Hall Saturday at 11 a.m., but we will be with the candidate herself. So if you can get out to Borough Hall on Saturday at 11 a.m., we can have a little bit of a visibility moment as well. So even if you could just drop by for a little bit, that would be amazing. We'll make sure to send it out in the emails as well. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a good point. So we have a whole fresh stack of literature in the back over here. So make sure to grab a couple of handfuls on your way out, and then we'll get the next literature drop on Saturday at 11 a.m. at Borough Hall if you need more after that. So make sure to grab some literature on the way out. And I could pass this around in case people are feeling inspired and want to sign up for a second shift or an initial shift. That would be amazing. So just going to keep this floating around. It could get more covered in frosting as it goes. Okay, so we were just talking about her, our esteemed assembly member. Would love to bring her up as she is nearly done with session. I think might report back soon, but would love to hear progress on all the accomplishments and how it's been since then. So Assembly Member Joanne Simon. Yes, the work is never done, as you said. Welcome. Great.
So thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, our work is never done. So yes, this has been a really, really difficult year, right? The budget was very late, and that meant that we had really a very compressed time frame to pass a lot of bills. So I think some of the ones that Marta was talking about are in that department. Plus the abortion access funds bill. Jessica has that bill, but the governor has been putting money into funding abortion access funds as well. So she's been doing that at the executive level. So New York is doing that and is helping, even with this bill not yet being passed. So everybody should know that, we're working on it. I wanted to go over a couple of things that, Andrew did a very good job. I'm not going to repeat what he said. The lockdown drills bill, I believe we will probably see much more success on that next week. Part of he talked about this bill. It's a very comprehensive bill. It really mandates training, it provides support, it provides transparency to parents. Again and again, I would talk to parents in my house who would say, I found out 2 weeks later when my son came home and said, you know, that day the shooter was there, Mom? And they would say, what shooter? There was no shooter at school, but they were in a drill and they didn't realize it wasn't real. And they're not all 5 and 6 years old. Some of these kids are 8 and 9 and they still believe it's real. And that is traumatizing. And also the parents don't have notice. So the parents don't get an opportunity to talk to them and prepare them about what will happen, right? So it requires notification to parents. It requires training. It requires that it be developmentally appropriate, that it be trauma informed, and that we reduce it from 4 to 1. We also have something like 12 fire drills. Like nobody wants to do all these fire drills. Like we have more, no offense to the fire department, but you know, what we find is people become desensitized. And that's one of the issue with the 4, because once you get into those sort of tween years, you know, they're like, yeah, you know, and then the older kids are learning a lot. And if you look at school shootings, which are, thank God, very, very rare, they're in the news, but they are very, very rare. It is most often a student or a former student. And so when they're in high school and they're smart, we're also teaching them stuff that maybe we don't want to reinforce 4 times a year. So, you know, the state education department is doing a lot of work on this. They hadn't really tackled the number yet, which was basically just put into a budget bill in 2016 with no explanation. And there was no data then to give anybody an idea what might have been appropriate. So they're really working at it. I'm working very closely with the state education department. We've had several Zoom calls with the commissioner and her people who are working on this. And so I'm very hopeful that we will make some significant progress. They have partners that they've been working on. They have a series of videos and training modules that they're releasing this month as well. So they're going to double back with all their partners and stakeholders on that as well before the next session. So I'm very hopeful about that. Just got a text saying bad news, but not for me. I did have a bill that would prohibit, would allow food and water to be distributed if somebody's waiting online for elections. And it passed the Senate because the Senate never pays any attention to anything. But I'm just a little dig at the Senate. But, you know, there is current litigation and the Assembly is not ready to move forward on something that is currently under litigation for that exact same thing. And it's the Brooklyn NAACP. I've had a lot of conversations with them. I'm hopeful that we might be able to make some progress on that front next year. Again, this is one of those things that if it's tangled and difficult and you've got 4 or 5 weeks and instead of 8 or 9, it tends to get compressed. And I think that happened with a couple of bills. I passed the dyslexia in screening when people come into prisons. Strong bipartisan, it was really unanimous. But it didn't get through the Senate. And it kind of one of those things fell off a cliff in the Senate. They tell me it's not substantive, but it fell off a cliff. Kenan may know more than I, but that's what I hear. The sponsor is Senator Myrie, so you can ask him. I passed a Litch Hospital closure bill, which was again requiring local input for hospital closures, requiring that they actually consider community needs and how the closure might affect communities and plan for that. I passed it again. It once again didn't get through the Senate. Here there's a kind of a holdup. I think the Hospitals Association, you know, are not wild about the idea. But curiously enough, just yesterday, there was an article in the Times Union that the Samaritan Hospital in Rensselaer County is going to close its maternity ward. And this bill would do hospital closures or closures of emergency or maternity departments. Why? That's what happened at Litch. They wanted to close maternity and pediatrics. And that is like often the warning sign, the death knell for the closure of the hospital. And there aren't many hospitals in this area, right? So part of the problem is around the state, you have to drive 45 minutes an hour to get to a hospital anyway. And if the hospital closes, you're out of luck. So it's really a dangerous thing. And we've had over 40 closures of hospitals in the last 10 years, right? Maybe it was 20. It's still a lot. I am hopeful that next year we will be able to, get that through the Senate, because I'll get it through the Assembly again. But that's the challenge. I did get the bill passed that would not allow the changing of poll sites for early voting too suddenly. They'd have to really start at 2 weeks, 5 days, and then there's an emergency provision if there's some like act of God kind of thing, you have another pandemic or and you can actually do 48 hours if there's a real crisis. And every county board would actually develop their own communications plan. Because, even if 5 days in advance, a pipe burst is not going to be able to be used, you can't get a mailing out. You're going to have an alternate way of getting to people. So that's going to be left up to the local boards of elections. And that actually passed both houses, thank heavens. The Way in Motion bill, as Senator Gennard has mentioned, the BQE, and we're taxing overweight, we're violating overweight trucks. It's really difficult to enforce this, the overweight truck limit along the BQE, because there's no place to pull the truck over and weigh it, right? So this is automatic enforcement. We are really ahead of the curve here, which is part of the reason we had to do a technical fix, because the rest of the world has not caught up to New York, believe it or not, in this instance. So this is something that was a city DOT priority, and we were able to pull that out. And because everything in the world revolves around the BQE or the Gowanus Canal, Susanna is not going to make the meeting tonight because she's at a BQE meeting where they're floating ideas for the connections between the BQE and Atlantic Avenue, right? Which is a really tough, miserable place. And having been briefed on this yesterday, I kind of figured nobody would like any of it. And so far the reports are nobody likes any of it. So I think they may be going back to the drawing board and doing something that is less Robert Moses-esque for this. I have a loan forgiveness bill. If you saw the New York Law Journal today, there was an article in there encouraging the passage of this bill. We have people who are lawyers in the DA's offices, who are lawyers with the various defenders, legal aid, indigent legal services, and they've been able to get, it's really not forgiveness, it's really a loan repayment. So they have to pay the loan, then they get reimbursed from this program. It's been around since 2009. And we would make it extended. They would be eligible for this service for, 2 years more. Also the limits of the amount they could get would be increased. Budget implications, but not this year. I have been stymied every step of the way, but I'm still working on it. And the Law Journal has an article on it, and we've gotten support from the Brooklyn DA. So I am hopeful that I can skip a step next week. And if not, it's the real issue for me in terms of timing is that the federal pause will be up in September. And so starting October 1st, those long payments will then restart. And that really makes a big difference to people. So we're hoping to do that. Now, the other thing is that I've been working on, as you know, is changing the way New York teaches its teachers how to teach reading, which is usually not very much. In New York, we have a very odd circumstance. We have elementary education, we have special education, and we have the reading specialists, right? So that most elementary education teachers aren't really taught much about how to teach reading, because if the kid doesn't pick it up, they're going to send them to the reading teacher. The problem with that is the reading teachers have been taught how to do approaches that actually don't work, that have been found to be ineffective The research is showing this for like 50 years. It's always a battle. There was just a report. I've been talking about this group that did a couple of reports in the past, just came out this week, where it really points to the fact that New York is behind the nation when it comes to what our teachers are learning in their higher education programs. And we're roughly, we have roughly 30% of our fourth graders are proficient in reading, which is not good. And some know a little bit, but they're not quite proficient, but also not good. That level is still very bad. The other thing is we know that there are the building blocks of reading. There are the 5 pillars of reading identified by the National Academy of Sciences in 2000. And in the study showed throughout the country, 25% of programs are doing a good job with this. 25% are not doing anything that builds on those pillars. And in others, they do a pillar here or there, not necessarily in the right order, the cart before the horse problem. In New York, there's one that is the most fundamental, which is phonemic awareness. I know I'm boring everybody, but New York is only 13% of its programs actually address it. That's really bad because 25% of the country's programs address it. So I have had a bill to change this for some time. It's a little bit difficult to get passed because they consider it about curriculum, but I have a new bill. We just put out a press release that we're going to be doing a bill that would have the education department audit all of our higher ed programs that are in teaching, kids P through 12, as well as educational administration, because it's important that the education administrators understand what they need to understand. And I believe that we'll be find that the department much more receptive to that. I've been talking with the commissioner about it and the chancellors of the public university systems about this issue for some time. This is, I think, a way to get that information. And also, we found out from this report that nearly half of New York's programs didn't even respond. So we don't have any data on them. And 61% got an F, by the way, of the ones who did respond. But there's a whole group that didn't respond at all. And so something that's done by the state education department can get those programs to respond in a way that an outside entity can't. So I'm very hopeful that this is a wake-up call and that we will be successful getting this moving next year. So that's my story. And I'm sticking with it. And I'm happy to answer questions because I know you need to kill time until Senator Myrie comes, right? And all those bills that didn't pass on the Senate side, can IND be helpful? Absolutely. Write to your senator. Write to a certain member of IND to talk to his principal. Some of these things, I understand the dyslexia screening in prisons, just, one of those things that fell off the table because of timing in the Senate. The Senate has fewer bills. The Assembly always has more, and our debates are longer. We have spent 5 hours debating the Clean Slate Act, which is Zellner's law, and he will tell you about it. It is remarkable, the work that was done on that, and I have been a big supporter of that. But it was 5 hours. We spent 3 and 4 hours on other bills, including ones that made no sense to debate at all. And I will tell you one that lasted about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And that was raising the age at which a child could drive an ATV. And literally one guy on the other side started going on and on about you people doing these crazy things, blah, 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 reproductive health, mifepristone, and we have to do this, and we have to do that. And everybody's going, isn't this about ATVs? Mifepristone? So but it wastes time. And it's like the filibuster. It's basically, they waste time. And so a lot of times, a lot of the debate is everybody repeating the talking points that they got from somebody and going on and on and on and having more and more and more people raise these issues in debate because it keeps us from doing more bills. And there's more of them than there are in the Senate. So just in the body count alone, the assembly often takes longer. And I know Joan is a veteran of this particular situation. And at least now we have a partner in the Senate, which we did not for many years. And a lot of our bills didn't make the Senate because they weren't supported by a Republican. And now that is not the situation. We've made a lot of progress, but we're not where we need to be in a number of areas. Yes, Jason. Oh, no, not anything will come up. There are a couple of bills that are outstanding that need to be passed that have strict timelines, right? Now, we did all the fish bills. Joan will remember the fish bills. Where every 2 years you have to pass a bill protecting some fish, including fish nobody ever heard of, right? Like somebody's like, what's a scup? I don't know. What's a scup? Right. But you only get a fish bill because I've never had a fish bill. And I was starting to feel a little bit, insecure. They didn't give me a fish bill. But I'm not on the Environmental Conservation Committee, so only members of the ENCON committee get fish bills. That is the answer to that one. But also local taxes, right? And so every municipality, village, whatever, the members from those areas will pass like a local sales tax bill or whatever. And those bills often have real time limits. They need to get those passed. So I don't really know. I do know there's a big issue with the Seneca Nation. If you saw the Supreme Court's decision upholding the sovereignty of the Indian nations, this is, it's been an issue here in New York State. We have a number of sovereign Indian nations here in New York State. And there's an issue, it's an upstate issue. It's one I really don't know very much about in terms of details, but I know that's one of the things. But right now, they're not putting things through other committees. If it's in rules, if it's teed up to go, that's likely. And if it doesn't have a lot of debate, because in 2 days, they don't want to do 5 hours of debate because, right? So there are ones where, and, I think that the other side of the aisle often actually wants to just go home too. And so, hopefully most of these will be on consent. I mean, I had my bill on the early voting sites was up for debate. It was on the debate calendar for several weeks and I was getting nervous. And so I talked to the guy who runs the floor on the other side. He said, talk to the elections ranker. So I did. And I explained it to him and, and so he said, okay, so we put it on the consent agenda. We were able to get it in. He made a comment on the bill and that was that. So it was much quicker, it was much easier. And there was no real reason to debate that bill. So they were happy to do that. So sometimes they've got something on debate and they'll move it to consent after they study it more closely. So I'm hopeful that most of what happens in the next 2 days or Tuesday, Wednesday, will be bills on consent so we get some things done and not go home with things that have left undone. Yes, ma'am. Well, I agree that we need the paper ballot, right? That is something that, New York dilly-dallied on HAVA at the time. And while we were found in violation, we waited long enough to be able to show that we needed paper ballots. And that makes it much easier to do recounts. You don't have to worry about the electronic shenanigans. And we all know that electronic shenanigans is possible. Now, the one thing paper ballots hasn't done is the box of ballots in the ceiling tile that somebody forgot to count. That can happen, and that has happened in races. So I don't really know the status of that. The election law chair would know more about that. Zellner, would know on the election law side on the Senate. I'm sure you'll ask him. And I'm not on the election committee, so even if there was something brewing within the committee, I wouldn't necessarily know about it. But I think it's something that's really important to do. I've talked to Eljoy about this, a while back, who's president of the Brooklyn NAACP. It's very important to have voting integrity and to have a paper ballot in New York. So I'm disappointed we didn't get, but I don't know why. I don't know what happened with that bill, unless it was just falling off of the radar screen. I don't know. So anyway, so that's the best I can do. My colleague in the Senate might have more information. About what? Yeah. Okay, so anything else you want to talk about? Yes. Sure, of course.
Yes, so Steve, our board chair, asks the milk carton ad, where is our congressman? Thank you, Marta. Yes, Dan Goldman was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he got pulled into a couple of events in the district, so he's in DC. He played in the baseball game yesterday, though, which was cool. But yes, I've expressed our disappointment multiple times to both his chief of staff and his community engagement director. So complaints have been registered. I think we have the IND brunch on his calendar for September, though, but would love to see him before then. I hear you, Steve. Feel free to reach out directly to him. Right. Yeah. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Mm. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I hear your frustration, though.
At the Manhattan office.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how big the sign is anywhere, but a big sign is an important feature. Yes. Karen.
Yeah.
And they cross-examined you. We were busy. Oh, good. We can get on to another topic.
Yes, just to, sorry.
That's right. That's good. If we want to introduce them, I don't care.
Take it away.
So thank you for that conversation. And I know that Alyssa will. Okay, I understand. Listen, I have a very big sign on my office. I just want to say that. I did tell you that there were a number of things that our senator might know more about than me. So he's having a cookie because he needs to keep up his energy. He needs a little sugar. He was out late last night. He had a fundraiser last night. Everybody was there who needed to be there. I was there late, but whatever, I got there. So I am happy that we have our state senator Zellner Myrie. And as you know, he now represents more of the 52nd than before, whereas before we had 4 state senators. We now only have 2. So that's great. It's great that one of those senators is Zellner and he's got a bigger piece of the 52nd than before. So I'm very happy about that. And he's a great partner in the Senate. So thank you.
Yeah, let me get the rest of the cookie down. Good evening, everyone. My apologies for being late. I know that folks are getting ready to head out. I ran into someone who was leaving as I was coming up, and then they decided to come back up. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to leave time for questions if that's okay. I know there are some questions, so would be happy to do that. But let me just say that this is, let me thank Alyssa for her leadership. Of course, Joanne Simon, who has just really been what you want a partner to be in the assembly, and someone who I've learned a lot from. So always grateful to her. And I'm grateful to all of you. I'm happy to be representing more of the 52nd. Happy to be in the fight with all of you. And this has been a really tough session. There's no way around that. I believe our session, certainly in the Senate, didn't start in January, but started in December upon the announcement of the governor's nomination for chief judge. And since that time, it has just been one thing after the other that has made this, in many ways, in my 5 years here, the most difficult legislative session that I've been a part of. But I will also say that there were things that we accomplished this past week that I am so incredibly proud of, that I stand by 1,000%. And it is the reason why a lot of us get into the work that we do. I'm again happy to talk, and I'm sure we'll have some questions about campaign finance stuff. I'm sure there's a diversity of opinions there, and some of the other things that we worked on. But I really want to focus on the 3 things that we passed last week that were top of mind for me. We know what our mass incarceration complex looks like here in the state. We know what the repercussions have been for many of the people, our friends, our neighbors, our family members. And it has been at each stage of the criminal justice system where the systemic unfairness has been. And we did 3 things to focus on different stages. The first being, we know most notoriously with the exonerated 5 that a lot of people who are innocent plead guilty. And they end up spending time in prison for many, many, many years for something that they have not done. And up until recently, they did not have the mechanism to declare their innocence, to say that I should not be here because I am innocent. We had no mechanism in our state statutes to allow for them to do that. And just this past week, we passed the Challenging Wrongful Convictions Act, which would give people that opportunity to ask the court, please take a look at this new evidence. Take a look at some of the things you may have missed. I am innocent and should not be incarcerated. But even while they're inside, I think most New Yorkers would be surprised to know that we legalize slavery in this state. In our Constitution, it is sanctioned, prohibited in every other circumstance except if you are an incarcerated individual. So we began the process of amending our Constitution to get rid of that provision that allows for forced labor in our prisons and finally ends slavery in its totality here in the state of New York. And then, of course, when people get out of incarceration, we have told them, okay, you served your time, you served your sentence, you've paid your debt to society, and then at every opportunity, we shut the door on them. We say you can't apply for housing because you have a conviction record. You can't apply for a job because you have a conviction record. You want to go to school and better yourself? Congratulations, you can't apply for financial aid because you have a conviction record. 2.3 million New Yorkers live this life every day. 1 in 7 of us have a conviction record. And this past week, with the help of Assemblymember Joanne Simon, who showed up to every single press conference, the legislature passed the Clean Slate Act, one of the things I am most proud of. And so there's a lot more work that needs to be done. As I'm sure the Assembly member mentioned, they will be back next week to close out some of these issues. But again, very grateful for the opportunity to be with you even for a little bit at the end, and very happy to answer questions. So thank you very much. I am.
Basically thrown in jail with very, very serious and violent criminals. And the expense of that is enormous. I think this is one of the bad things. What to have in federal camps, or, you know, full security prisons, I mean, less expensive,
Right.
More humane, certain parts of the
You know, to my knowledge, there has been no serious effort to look into this, and it's something that I would love to. I know we've spoken about this before, but to put some more meat on the bones and see what that could actually look like. You know, I was just talking at another event. I, in law school, taught at a maximum security prison, Auburn Correctional Facility, the birthplace of the electric chair, and seeing what the conditions were there and talking to the students who were model incarcerated individuals who should not be in those circumstances. I think it makes the point that we should be figuring out, you know, it is the Department of Corrections, right? Not the Department of Punishment. That's exactly right. And so we should be looking at how we can facilitate correcting and rehabilitating. And I think low security would go towards that end. That's right. That's right. Oh, yep. Yes, great question. So this was actually a point of contention during the three-way negotiations between Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's office. We put in a provision in the first iteration of this bill that would hold government entities and certain employers responsible if they released records that should be sealed, right? And so it was meant to, and it created a private right of action to be an incentive for people to be on their best behavior, to not release the records unnecessarily. That's one facet of enforcement. Another piece of this has been, and it's a question that comes up a lot, particularly from individuals who are impacted, who say, well, what do I do on a job application? If I fill out a job application and they ask me, you know, do you have an arrest or conviction record? And if that record is sealed pursuant to this act, they can say no. And they will have the opportunity to, you know, avail themselves of the opportunity. Additionally, we already have in our laws, it's in I mentioned this during the debate on the floor, Article 23 of our executive law that prevents or prohibits discrimination based on criminal history. That is a law that's enforceable by our Attorney General, and one that I think is going to come into play as Clean Slate comes onto line. There are going to be perhaps some claims of discrimination based on conviction history, and that it would be within the jurisdiction of the Attorney General to pursue. Yeah, the truth is that in a moment where we have been having a pretty fever-pitched conversation around public safety and what that means, it is remarkable that we were able to get anything that even smells of criminal justice reform through in the legislature. And the only reason I believe we were able to do that was because of how broad this coalition was. So we had the Partnership for the City of New York, not known for supporting criminal justice efforts. We had the Business Council of New York, supportive of the Clean Slate Act. Many chambers of commerce, including our very own Chamber of Commerce, supported the Clean Slate Act. A number of Fortune 500 companies, including Microsoft, Verizon, the day before we passed it, Indeed.com supported the Clean Slate Act. And this business support, I think, helped, one, give cover to individuals who were afraid of what the political repercussions might be, but it also made the case to people who are reluctant to say this is a jobs bill. This is fundamentally about giving people an opportunity to be in our workforce. And these are businesses that are clamoring for more people to work. So I think that really helped us. We had broad support in the labor space. Almost every major labor union was supportive of this. And I also think that contributed to us being able to surmount the sort of criminal justice hurdle in the legislature. Yep. Sure. So this is the public finance fix bill. And let me say a couple of things on this. And I don't know how much we've already spoken about this tonight, so I don't want to. Not at all. Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So as most people know, when public finance was first introduced, it wasn't introduced as a standalone bill. This wasn't a bill that passed the legislature as a single bill. It was put in the budget. And we know that, how that works. Our former governor inserted the language into the budget. People supported it to the extent that they voted yes for the budget. But even then, there were some people who were reluctant about what public finance could look like. I was not one of those folks. I was a champion for it. We held a hearing on it. I have written op-eds in support of it, most recently with Controller DiNapoli a couple of weeks ago. So big supporter of it when it was passed into law by way of the budget in 2019. Okay, so it was not meant to be effective until this current cycle. And part of the budget conversation this year, there was a rubber meets the road moment of whether we were going to put money into the system or not. And that is when some of the conversations began about people delaying the program or getting rid of the program in its entirety. And without outing my colleagues, I will say that there was a very strong and material sentiment to not continue with the program. And so I was faced with two options. We either try to salvage the program or have no program at all. And I chose to salvage the program. Now, I understand why that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. I also don't feel great about how the process played out. But as chair of the elections committee, I had the responsibility of introducing the bill. I don't love the bill. I don't love every piece of the bill. But I also think that we have not had a frank conversation about what the bill does. So one of the things that I think has rankled folks is the $250 contribution, right? And for those not familiar with campaign finance laws, as most normal people are not, so under the under the status quo, right? Because the bill hasn't been signed into law. Under the status quo, $250 gets you matching up to that 250. 251, you get nothing for any of that. This proposal says a contribution of any amount, that first $250 will be matched. Now, does that allow for bigger contributions to benefit from matching funds? It does, but that's also the exact same system that we have here in New York City. It's the same exact system. So I get why people have a problem with it, but I think it's curious to have a problem with this and not have voiced your opposition to that system on the New York City level. We also raised the amount of individual contributions you had to get in order to trigger or be eligible for public matching funds. It went in the state Senate, it went from 150 to 350. So you need 350 individual contributions. Again, that is a significant bump of 200 more contributions. But what I have told folks is in my race in 2018, where all of you were supportive and helped get us over the finish line. I asked them, do you know how many in-district contributions I got in 2018 as a challenger? And most people don't know. Close to 3,000. Yeah. And you know, I don't say that to like boost myself. I say it to say that 350 is not an insurmountable amount. It's not something that will prevent a serious challenger from getting. I think it still allows for people to avail themselves of public matching. It just is a greater demonstration of community support. There were also some really positive things that came out of this bill that were not included in the original proposal. One, you get your money earlier. So under the status quo, you will not get your matching funds until close to 30 days before the primary. All of us know what it takes to run races. We know how much money it takes to run races. Getting the money that late in the game is not terribly helpful. Under this bill, you could actually get your first payment in December. So assuming you were running in next year's election, you could get a payment this December, and the payments would be more frequent as outlined in this bill. We also require training for treasurers, et cetera, on the public matching, which I think is helpful for all of us, one, to guard the public fisc, but also for potential candidates. If they say, look, I just followed the training that I got from the board, I think it helps with the management of all the nuances of the bill. And then for our legal beagles out there, we included a severability clause, which is important for this primary reason. Our Republican friends have demonstrated a desire to sue us on as many laws as possible and to get us into court as often as possible in order to prevent the policies they disagree with. What we did not have in the status quo was a severability clause that would say if we lost in court on this, it doesn't toss out the entire law, which is what would happen now. We have no severability clause. This bill includes a severability clause to say that anything that is invalidated by the court would be contained in that section that was invalidated. The rest of the program remains. And then I'll say personally, you know, I introduced a public campaign finance fix bill close to a month ago, May 15th, to no fanfare or anything. It was my attempt to try to clean up, along with some of the other good government groups, some of the things that we thought needed fixing in that bill. And so for those who have publicly questioned my integrity, whether or not I am now a corrupt Albany politician, et cetera, I would urge you to look at my record and you just look at my record last week. You know, in the editorial that the New York Times wrote, they made reference to a hypothetical where someone who is applying for a state contract could give a contribution and have that be publicly matched and also benefit from getting the state contract. And it failed to mention that I sponsor a bill in the Senate that would ban contributions from individuals seeking contracts from the state. And so I would just urge folks to look at the totality of my record, and I'm happy to answer any further questions. No, not at all, not at all. Please don't listen to Senator Gennardez. Yeah, goodness. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I believe, didn't we move that in the Senate? Yeah, and I think, look, there are, and so for folks who are unfamiliar with the issue, this is within the space of election security and ensuring that ballots, upholding the integrity of our ballots. There have been some political concerns or issues, I should say, the folks who have come out in opposition to this that I think have made it difficult for some of my colleagues to see the issue and the substance and to separate it from the individuals who are advocating or opposed to it. But to your point, Jan, I think it is going to be mission critical next year for us to ensure the soundness of our elections. And I'm, happy to talk through some strategy about how we get that, across the finish line. I think, John.
Say, they can't, one of the issues that is not as present is the fact that my head is federal. And so while you can get some money early, for people in primary, it's still a very compressed period of time to get those funds. And that, of course, would be the same for a challenge. This helps them as well. But it really is more advantageous to people in general, which is increasingly true even in fair borough. So, I think it's important that people realize that was something the campaign finance board learned after running it differently for years. They instituted, and that has been a real important feature at the end of the city's campaign.
It's exactly right.
I know that you've had a bill for a while, trying to reduce the number of commissioners in city board elections from the 10 to just 2. Is there any sort of update on what's going on with that?
Yeah, so let me not take credit for that exact bill. That bill for New York City is sponsored by Senator Kruger. And it doesn't just include the minimization of commissioners, but make some other structural changes meant to what has been characterized as professionalizing the board. When I say that, I don't mean to imply that they're not professionals at the board right now. But some of the concerns around what we've seen, this is an attempt to do that. I think that's a difficult bill politically for a lot of my colleagues. Not, I think, because they don't believe in it conceptually, but if you have a pretty good relationship with your county organization, who is largely responsible for the appointing of those commissioners, and that's a story for another day, then it's going to be harder for you to step out on this issue. But here again, I'm grateful to all of you because you've made our ability to advocate for these changes just a direct reflection of our constituency. So not just that bill, but broader changes to how we administer our elections. As you know, we went across the state 2 years ago and we held hearings in all of our major cities. We produced a 60-page report, and we've passed a number of those bills, but still have some work to do on some of our colleagues. But the continued appetite for it, particularly here and in this jurisdiction, I think has helped me make the case. Yeah, so again, for those not familiar with the issue, both houses passed a bill to move non-New York City local elections, most of them to even year. And as Jan stated, there is a large body of evidence that tells us even year elections increase voter participation. There are a couple of but steps to take if we wanted to do something like that in the city. Chief of them being, we would need a constitutional amendment. Currently, the New York Constitution prevents us from doing that. So we would need to do that. During the floor debate, this was the sponsor of the bill in my house, Senator Skoufis, spoke about the effort to get that going. I believe there are already campaigns afoot on that to get this constitutional amendment. I will say, and this is a conversation I think I was talking to Howard about the other night, there are some complexities here, right? We have state races that are not ranked choice voting, and we have a lot of city stuff that is ranked choice voting. And you can imagine a voter getting a ballot saying like, here you can do rank, here you can't. I don't know what the solution to that is. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the concern is, when it's all of the legislative races, it's not just a countywide race, but a legislative race that's non-ranked, and other races that are ranked. It's not an insurmountable thing. I think we can figure it out, and I think we should figure it out before we sort of step ahead in trying to do it here in the city. But I agree with it conceptually. My understanding is that this was done to reduce New York City's influence, like, way back in the day when the Constitution was being written, to reduce the city's influence on the state politic. So, I'm always for us restoring our rightful place and getting into it. Okay, welcome. So this is, yeah, so we passed we passed the bill out of the out of committee in the elections committee, another Senator Kruger bill to have the State Board of Elections conduct a study on the feasibility of ranked choice voting statewide, what it would look like, how it would work functionally. And I think that, I'm supportive of it. Obviously, it moved through our committee. I think it's an idea that people want to have a real discussion about. I think, there will be, just like there was opposition here in the city, there certainly will be opposition statewide. But I think if we lead with, here is what it would require, we do a study, we have the data, we have the backup, then it makes our case much easier to make to folks once we get to it. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I know we have like 7 minutes before we get kicked out of the room. Seamus has a quick update talking about elections from the Accessibility Task Force. So we'd love to bring him up real quick, or advisory.
Hey y'all, so going from one election person to another, because, of course, Senator Myrie is always the better speaker. So as some of you may know, I'm a member of the Board of Elections accessible voting advisory committee. Of course, try to say that 5 times fast. So we had a meeting today. One of the things that just as a heads up, of course, I don't have to tell you all about what's going on with the elections and all that this weekend, but one thing that is worth noting that won't probably apply to anyone in this room, but maybe people on Zoom. Saturday is what's called Golden Day. Yeah, Jan's excited. So that is we actually now have same-day voter registration in New York. So if you vote by a affidavit ballot on Saturday, that will actually count as your voter registration, and that ballot will automatically count. So we now have that, and we actually to thank for that friend of the club, Bobby Carroll. Additionally, they are working on some other new things, like they are trying to find some new voting machines, which will also, of course, accommodate paper. Right now there's going out with RFPs. And one of the things that they are also trying to start working on is with the BOE is trying to have, because there, of course, are issues with people with language barriers and all that, of trying to make sure that trying to use what they do in a lot of hospitals, where they'll have a tablet where you can just communicate back and forth with with interpreters. And then lastly, just one thing also, well, 2 things. One, if anyone thinks that they may need any sort of accommodation, please contact the BOE. It's ADA coordinator at vote.nyc, I think it is, or just go on vote.nyc and just search for accessibility. And also, if anyone encounters any issues, shoot us an email, because then I get them, and then I can report back to the accessible vote or to the AVAC, as we call it, just because it's shorter. That will actually just this way I can pass on all the issues that we are encountering, because that's a big thing that we do try to discuss. Yeah. Yes, online voter registration. We now have that statewide. Woo!
they will get the active ballot envelope, which is the voter registration form.
Mm.
They will have the form, so there'll be two pieces of proof that they will register.
Yeah, and just to reiterate for the people on Zoom, Jan brought up that basically if you're gonna be registering online, it won't probably be processed in time, but also make sure you just show up at the poll site and also just still ask for an affidavit ballot. Because that way they will have two forms and no matter what, on Saturday, your vote will count.
Hey, thank you, Seamus, and thanks to our election aficionados. I think this is just a result of putting the right people in office. And as Zelmar mentioned, we were with him since 2018 and happy to be with him as he embarks on all of the good things to come. So, all right, we have stuff coming up. Just want to reiterate, if you have not. Oh, yes, sorry, Rena, would you like to say anything? Okay. Rena spoke through cookies and cupcakes, which is the preferable way to talk. So thanks for being here. And I think I spotted Marva as well on the Zoom. So thank you for popping in. So just to reiterate, a couple of upcoming events. This Saturday will be 11 a.m. at Borough Hall. I hope to see a lot of you there. We'll have an early voting kickoff and same day voter registration kickoff as well. We can throw those into our talking points. And then we have a couple things to come and make sure everyone signed up. So I will be reaching out to you the day before your shift that you signed up for. So get ready for happy little voicemail from me. And thank you all so much. And thanks to our senators and assemblywomen and BK Forge for joining us tonight. Do I have a motion? All right, so move. Thank you, everyone. Get home safe. Take care. Got that. Okay.